29-year-old Joshua Michael Rosebush was accused of committing 26 crimes in Saginaw Township, Michigan, while absconding from parole in January of 2019. Rosebush, who had a long criminal history, had been wearing state-ordered tethers on his ankles, which he cut off on January the 3rd. He subsequently stole a vehicle on Maple Street, which police found abandoned hours later. Early on the morning of January the 22nd, police officer Jeff Koenig observed a Ford pickup truck with no headlights and conducted a traffic stop. Unbeknownst to the 48-year-old officer, Rosebush was behind the wheel. As Koenig approached the driver's side window, he reportedly heard the motorist say, "Nighty night," before 2 shots were fired from a .38 caliber pistol. The officer suffered gunshot wounds to the jaw and right arm. Rosebush fled the scene, dumped the vehicle, and then stole another one at the Speedway gas station on Bristol Road in the city of Burton. Shortly after 1 p.m., Rosebush was spotted around Woodbury and Lansing Roads in Shiawassee County. During an ensuing car chase, he fired at the police, prompting them to return fire. Rosebush sustained gunshot wounds and was eventually apprehended. He was then transported to a hospital for treatment. On October the 4th of 2019, a jury found Rosebush guilty of several crimes, including assault with intent to murder, vehicle theft, using a firearm during a felony, and other charges. On November the 27th, he was sentenced to a minimum of 75 years and a maximum of 115 years behind bars. Rosebush wasn't given credit for the time he'd already served. Additionally, he was ordered to pay $1,253.44 in restitution. Number 8. Lance Stores. On the evening of June the 30th of 2022, 3 Kentucky police officers were killed in a shootout at the home of a man whom authorities referred to as an extremist on a mission. Deputies showed up at the residence in rural Prestonsburg with a warrant for Lance Stores' arrest in connection with a domestic violence incident. Before deputies made contact with Stores, the 49-year-old barricaded himself inside the home with his wife and daughter. Subsequently, the suspect opened fire on the deputies. According to the Floyd County Sheriff, it took several hours to figure out where the gunman was firing from. The deputies called for backup, and several agencies responded to the scene. In the aftermath of a 5-hour standoff, Prestonsburg Police Captain Ralph Frazier, Deputy William Petrie, and canine handler Jacob Chaffins, along with a sheriff's canine named Drago, succumbed to gunshot wounds inflicted by shots fired from Stores' rifle. Several other officers were wounded and taken to local hospitals for treatment. Stores was taken into custody while his family was fortunately left unharmed. He was accused of murder, attempted murder, wanton endangerment, domestic violence, assault, and assault on a service animal. In August, he pleaded not guilty to each of the charges. Nearly 7 months later, the man was found dead in a shower stall at the Pike County Detention Center. Number 7. Keith Lloyd. In December of 2016, a physical altercation in Orlando, Florida, devolved into a fatal shooting, eventually giving way to a month-long manhunt for the individual responsible. On the night of December the 13th, 41-year-old Keith Lloyd, a convicted felon, got into an argument with Sade Dixon outside her home on Long Peak Drive. The 24-year-old was identified as Lloyd's ex-girlfriend and was reportedly pregnant with his child. In the aftermath of the heated confrontation, Lloyd shot Dixon and her brother, but rushed to her aid. According to Orange County deputies, Lloyd fled the scene while Dixon ultimately died. Shortly after 7 a.m. on January the 9th, Orlando police officer Deborah Clayton spotted Lloyd in a Walmart parking lot on Princeton Street. When Officer Clayton approached Lloyd, the man attempted to flee. Upon realizing he couldn't get around Clayton, however, the suspect opened fire, hitting the officer several times before leaving the scene. Days later, on January the 17th, Lloyd was located at a house on Lescott Lane, where he'd been hiding out. He reportedly crawled out of the residence covered in body armor and armed with 2 guns. It took 6 officers to subdue him and put him in handcuffs. During the course of his arrest, he sustained blows that ultimately caused him to lose his left eye and also suffered multiple lacerations. A state attorney deemed the use of force in Lloyd's arrest justified because officers believed he might have been armed. After being treated at a hospital, Lloyd was taken to the Orange County Jail. He was found guilty of the first-degree murder of Sade Dixon and the unborn baby in October of 2019 and was sentenced to life in prison without parole. In November of 2021, Lloyd was convicted of Clayton's murder, along with aggravated assault and carjacking. 4 months later, he was sentenced to death. Number 6. Emily Petronella. A shooting broke out while a police tactical team attempted to serve a search warrant at a residence in the Humboldt Park neighborhood of Chicago on March the 9th of 2019. ABC News reported that 19-year-old Emily Petronella had been free on a $10,000 bond stemming from charges of unlawful use of a weapon. Petronella was suspected of having narcotics and illegal weapons at the home at the time of the incident. Shortly after 7 p.m. when police arrived, she thought burglars were attempting to break in, so she fired through the rear door of her home, according to her attorney. Officers didn't return fire, but one of them sustained a gunshot wound. The injured officer was taken to Stroger Hospital, where he was considered to be in stable condition. Police ultimately seized more than 11 pounds of marijuana, a semi-automatic pistol, and bundles of cash from the home. Petronella was held without bail and accused of a slew of charges, including attempted murder and aggravated assault on a peace officer. Subsequent information indicated that her bail was set at $150,000. She was released and required to wear an electronic monitoring device while awaiting trial. Number 5. Sergio Francisco Rodriguez. A Honduran man pulled the trigger on a policewoman during a routine traffic stop in Stafford, Texas at about 3 a.m. on October the 26th of 2013. 40-year-old officer Anne-Marie Carrizales approached the vehicle after stopping it on Murphy Road. The car had 3 male occupants who were allegedly in the midst of a crime spree at the time. As Carrizales spoke with the driver, one of the passengers shot her twice at point-blank range. One bullet hit her in the cheek while another hit her in the chest, but was stopped by the bulletproof vest she was wearing. The car subsequently sped off and Carrizales fired back, smashing the vehicle's rear window. What followed was a 20-mile hot pursuit by Carrizales and other law enforcement officers responding to her call for backup. Eventually, the shooter, identified as 21-year-old Sergio Francisco Rodriguez, was cornered in an apartment complex and arrested. Carrizales went to a local hospital and was released later that night. In June of 2014, the other 2 suspects, named as Daniel Cruz and Freddy Enriquez, were apprehended. Cruz and Enriquez, both in their 20s at the time, were later found guilty of aggravated assault on a peace officer. Cruz was sentenced to 14 years of incarceration, while Enriquez was handed a life sentence. On May the 22nd of 2017, Rodriguez pleaded guilty to the same charge in exchange for 50 years behind bars with eligibility for parole after 25 years. He apologized to Carrizales, saying, "I truly am sorry for having to try to kill her." Number 4. Thomas Kinworthy Jr. St. Louis police responded to the South Grand neighborhood near Tower Grove Park at around 6:30 p.m. on August the 29th of 2020. Police dispatch received reports of a man having allegedly opened fire in an alleyway. After officers Tamaris Bohannon and Orlando Bailey responded to the scene, they were shot by Thomas Kinworth Jr., who barricaded himself inside a stranger's home. The ensuing standoff finally ended at around 5:30 the following morning, at which point the 43-year-old gunman was arrested. In the aftermath, Officer Bailey was treated for a leg wound, while Bohannon succumbed to a gunshot wound to the head. Kinworthy was held in the St. Louis City Justice Center charged with first-degree murder, 3 counts of armed criminal action, assault, burglary, resisted arrest and unlawful use of a firearm. Updates on his case indicated that he planned to rely on a mental health-centered defense during his trial. Number 3. John Williams. Maine resident John Williams was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of 61-year-old Somerset County Sheriff's Corporal Eugene Cole. On April the 25th of 2018, Cole was shot to death while trying to arrest 29-year-old Williams on drug charges in the town of Norwich Walk. The suspect then stole Cole's cruiser and went on the run. Shortly before 1 p.m. on April the 28th, Williams was captured near Lostbrook and Route 139. Cole's handcuffs were reportedly used in Williams' arrest. The man was subsequently booked into the Maine State Prison. 14 months later, He appeared in Cumberland County Superior Court, where a jury found him guilty of murder. During his sentencing on September the 12th of 2019, William expressed hope that he might eventually be forgiven by the community and the victim's family. Number 2. Jason Dane Brown. Indiana man Jason Dane Brown was charged in the shooting death of Southport Police Lieutenant Aaron Allen, which occurred on July the 27th of 2017. Brown flipped his car after driving erratically, crashing it near Madison Avenue and Maynard Drive. When Officer Allen went to help, Brown opened fire, mortally wounding him. Officers believed that Brown's violent reaction was unprovoked and that he was on drugs at the time of the incident. The Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department released Brown's mugshot, in which he appeared badly injured from the car crash. Nearly 5 years later, in February of 2022, he was found guilty of Allen's murder, as well as marijuana possession. He was later sentenced to a total of 58 years in prison, 3 of which were suspended. After number 1, we still have our earlier release on when acting tough goes wrong, queued up for you as well. Stay tuned if you'd like. Number 1. David Anthony Weir. A vehicle driven by Oklahoma man David Anthony Weir was pulled over by 2 Tulsa police officers during the summer of 2020. The traffic stop took place in the 8900 block of East 21st Street on June the 29th. Weir, who was in his early 30s, was asked by Sergeant Craig Johnson and Officer Orash Zarkeshian to get out of his vehicle at least 12 times. He continually refused, so the officer deployed a taser. However, Weir wasn't subdued, so they doused him with pepper spray. When they managed to get Weir out of the car, he pulled out a gun and shot both Johnson and Zarkeshian multiple times. The officers went down, enabling Weir to flee the scene in a vehicle driven by Matthew Hall. The injured officers underwent surgery, but Sergeant Johnson passed away the following day. Zarkeshian would later improve and return to active duty. Hall and Weir were ultimately arrested. The former was found guilty of 2 counts of accessory to a felony and sentenced to 24 years in prison. Weir pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder, shooting with intent to kill, possession of a firearm after a felony conviction, possession of drugs, and obstructing an officer. A Tulsa jury later found him guilty on all charges, and in May of 2022, he was formally sentenced to death for Johnson's murder. He was also handed a life sentence in order to pay a total of $30,500 in connection with his other offenses. Weir's execution date was scheduled for August the 10th, but official records indicated that his representation had filed a notice of appeal. Number 8. Emma and Valerie Daly. At about 2 a.m. on November the 20th of 2021, Englishwoman Natalie Bell was talking to a friend in Manchester city centre when she became the victim of a brutal, unprovoked attack. 25-year-old Emma Daly, who was 6.5 months pregnant at the time, was identified as a main aggressor in a group that charged Bell. Emma's younger sister Valerie ran up to the woman and punched her in the back of the head. Joining the Daly sisters in the attack was Valerie's girlfriend, 20-year-old Chelsea Leary. As shown by CCTV footage, the trio kicked Bell in the face and body after she'd collapsed to the ground. Emma pulled the victim back as she tried to crawl away and, along with the others, continued raining down strikes on her. Bell was left with a black eye, cuts and swelling to her right eye, injuries to her nose as well as bruising to her ribs. The attack had reportedly stemmed from an unspecified grudge, and the trio were arrested in the aftermath. Leary admitted assault and was given a 12-month jail sentence, suspended for 2 years. Emma and Valerie pleaded guilty to assault, occasioning actual bodily harm, and were jailed for 14 months each. For the former, it meant that she'd have to give birth while behind bars. The Daly sisters had a history of trouble with the law. Emma had 19 offenses on her record, some of which included assaulting police, while Valerie had been involved in a racist gang attack on an Afro-Caribbean hair and makeup artist in 2018. The woman was verbally abused, subjected to racial slurs, and reportedly told to go back to her country. She was also physically assaulted, suffering cuts and bruising to her head while also having clumps of hair ripped out of her scalp. Number 7. Justin Balboa. 31-year-old Justin Balboa was acting tough and gesturing arm wrestling techniques while heavily intoxicated at a restaurant called B Square Burgers in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, on June the 27th of 2021. A bystander then captured the man on cell phone video as he stepped back and bumped into another of the bar's patrons. He was later identified as mixed martial artist and elite Muay Thai kickboxer Joe Schilling. The 37-year-old gently moved Balboa out of his way and continued walking. Balboa then shouted something at Schilling, prompting him to turn around, at which point Balboa lunged at him. Fight analysts commented on the footage would later note that the movement was indicative of him gearing up to throw a right hand at Schilling. The professional fighter reacted before that could happen and landed a rapid punch combination to Balboa's head, which knocked him unconscious. After regaining consciousness, he called the police and told them that Schilling had hit him for no reason. The man was hospitalized with a head injury and eventually recovered, while a video of the knockout was widely shared online in the incident's wake. Commenting on what had happened on social media, the fighter maintained he'd acted in self-defense, while also noting that Balboa had uttered racist remarks to the bar staff prior to the altercation. Schilling later told a media outlet that no official charges had been filed against him. On July the 1st, Balboa filed a personal injury lawsuit against the fighter and the corporate entity behind B Square Burgers. The suit accused the pro fighter of battery and the establishment of negligence, seeking close to $100,000 in damages. Number 6. Juan Luis Lagunas Rosales. Teenage influencer Juan Luis Lagunas Rosales became popular on social media in his native Mexico through videos in which he drank heavily, as well as for his baby face and sense of humor. At the age of 15, before finishing high school, he moved to Culiacan, the capital and largest city of Sinaloa. The state was notorious for its criminal activity, with its eponymous cartel once headed by notorious drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. Rosales rose to fame through an internet persona he dubbed the Pirate of Culiacan and amassed close to 2 million followers across various social media platforms. Then in late 2017, the inebriated influencer was filmed insulting Mexico's most wanted man, drug lord Nemesio El Mencho Oseguera Cervantes. Under his leadership, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel had become one of the country's leading criminal organizations, with much of his reputation relying on the aggressive use of extreme violence. The cartel had even been reported to cannibalize its victims, sometimes as training for new members. At the time that Rosales was filmed insulting Cervantes, both the US and Mexico were offering millions of dollars for information leading to the latter's capture. Weeks after posting the video, on December the 18th, Rosales was partying with his friends at the Mentados Cantaros bar in Jalisco and gave away his location on Instagram. A group of sicarios burst into the establishment at around 11 p.m. and opened fire on the influencer. He was shot 15 to 18 times and died on the spot, with his body subsequently identified via his tattoos. A 25-year-old bar employee was also gunned down, and no arrests were reported in connection to the incident in the immediate aftermath. Number 5. Autumn King. 20-year-old Texas woman Autumn King was taken into custody by the Lone Star Fugitive Task Force on January the 14th of 2019 in connection to the shooting death of her boyfriend, 26-year-old Eric Charles Allen. Officers from the Austin Police Department were called to their Rampart Street home on December the 23rd of the previous year. They found Allen with a gunshot wound, and the emergency services tried to save his life, but the man passed away before he could be transported to a hospital. Following her arrest, King told law enforcement that she and her boyfriend had tried to be like Bonnie and Clyde on Snapchat. Allen had tried to take a photo of her as she was aiming a loaded assault rifle at him. As recounted by King, she then mistakenly pressed the trigger and a bullet struck her boyfriend. At first, she thought he was playing a prank on her, but then called 911 upon realizing he was really hurt. A coroner listed the cause of the man's death as homicide, and King faced manslaughter charges. Number 4. Jayaganesh Eswaran. In January of 2020, personal trainer Harry Hornopolis was kissing his girlfriend, Jade Konati, on the floor outside the Town Hall train station in Sydney's central business district. As shown by CCTV footage which subsequently went viral, the couple were approached by 2 men, one of whom was named as Jayaganesh Eswaran. They started harassing the couple and insulted Konati, who then reportedly pushed Eswaran in the chest. A scuffle ensued and Hornopolis intervened, fearing for the safety of his girlfriend. He traded several punches with the other men and eventually landed a powerful blow to Warren's chin, which knocked him out cold. The man fell to the concrete and suffered critical head injuries, which allegedly left him with memory problems following his recovery. Even though the footage and Konati's report seemingly confirmed that Hornopolis had acted in his and his girlfriend's defense, he was arrested on charges of assault, recklessly occasioning grievous bodily harm. In April of 2021, however, his defense plea was accepted and he was cleared of any wrongdoing. Number 3. Fab Tanga. Leading up to July the 23rd of 2022, British Twitter user Fab Tanga had been pestering IBF flyweight world champion Sonny Edwards online. The former challenged the pro boxer to a fight, claiming they were both warriors, even though he was a novice, while Edwards had been ranked by BoxRec as the world's best active flyweight the year prior. Tanga, whom many described as an internet troll, then traveled 200 miles by train from London to the Sheffield gym, where 26-year-old Edwards trained. He posted a photo of himself outside of the building, prompting a video reply from the enraged boxing champion, who claimed he was on the way. Edwards, who at the time had his 2 young children in the car, showed up at the gym, and the ensuing bout was live streamed on social media. The professional boxer's superiority was evident throughout the session, as he kept his hands down and easily evaded the wild swings coming from the physically larger but evidently inexperienced Tanga. The pair reached the second round when Edwards struck the other man with a hard left hook to the head, which sent him with his back on the ropes. Exhaustion and the fear of incurring further damage led to Tanga quitting the bout. Both men exchanged complimentary tweets in the aftermath, with Edwards claiming Tanga had earned his respect and the latter praising the boxer as the UK's super champion. Number 2. Christopher Rivas. A man in West Covina, California, walked up to the front lobby of a local police station in February of 2017 while carrying an aluminium baseball bat. 28-year-old Christopher Rivas was caught by security cameras as he started hitting the bat against the station's glass windows. Terrified by his outburst, 3 women seated next to the windows in the lobby then ran to a secure area. Rivas stood in the sliding doors, threatening to enter and cause further mayhem. He took a few more swings at one of the doors as officers inside were preparing to intercept him. While Rivas was distracted, an unnamed officer who had been outside as the incident was unfolding crept up behind him. He got within a few feet of the baseball bat wielder, then charged and forcefully tackled him. They both landed inside the police station, where other members of law enforcement subdued Rivas and took him into custody. No motive was disclosed for his attack on the station that resulted in the man being charged with assault with a deadly weapon and resisting arrest. Number 1. Erica Cole. Alabama woman Erica Cole was arrested in July of 2019 on charges of attempted murder, assault, and reckless endangerment. A heated road rage argument had occurred along Highway 69 in Dodge City, involving the 31-year-old, her husband, Nicholas, and another motorist. The confrontation culminated at a home in Bremen on County Road 160, where Erica brandished a pistol with the intention of shooting the unnamed person involved in the feud. She misaimed her weapon, however, and accidentally shot her husband in the head. The man was rushed to the intensive care at the UAB hospital and subsequently pronounced to be in stable condition. Emma was arrested, but it wasn't made immediately clear if she had any legal representation. An investigation was launched into the incident, which generated a number of conspiracy theories among internet users. The most prominent speculation was that Erica and the other motorists knew each other, and they deliberately set up the road rage confrontation so that she could kill Nicholas. Thanks for watching. Would you rather accidentally take a life and get away with it, or spend 15 years in prison for a crime you didn't commit? Let us know in the comments section below.